decide what to do with it. And I feel like there are a lot of cases where, well, obviously there's some cases where it's required medically, but there are also some cases that can be very traumatic, such as SA and other things like that.
Would you say that you're holding like a bodily integrity stance or like a bodily autonomy stance? Is that going to be like autonomy, the right to do what you want with your body?
Yeah. Personally, yeah.
So, do you think that like these rights are going to be absolutes, like autonomy, integrity, like these are going to be absolute?
Yeah.
You think that rights are absolute?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase the question? I thought you were repeating yourself.
No, I'm asking you if you think that rights are absolute, meaning like they like stand regardless of any other variables, like they can't be forfeited, they can't be like removed.
Yeah, the rights for the person with the uterus.
No, I'm asking in general, not even just pertaining to pregnancy. I just mean like in general, all rights. Do you think that rights in general are going to be absolute?
It depends.
So like the right, would you say that like human beings have a right to life?
Yeah.
So do you think that this right to life is absolute?
Yeah, for human beings that are born.
For human beings that are born, why does being born matter?
Because it's viable.
Well, it can be viable before it's born, right?
I mean, if you let it become viable. I mean,
it's viable enough, maybe.
It's viable enough. Yeah.
Maybe.
Whatever that means.
Just maybe.
I just don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think
you understand.
You could say that.
That's a good point right there.
You understand what's entailed when you say absolute rights? Do you know what's entailed by that?
I have the feeling they're using absolute as a term to include fetuses, unborn fetuses into them. Well, fetuses are unborn, but yeah.
No, that's not okay. When she's asking you if it's absolute, she's saying that, do you think that somebody has full rights to their bodily autonomy in all cases possible?
Yes.
Okay, so can somebody use their body to unalive another human being outside the womb?
Outside of the womb? No, that's...
Why not? Why not?
Because they're a living, breathing human that has been born.
No, he's asking like outside of the womb, if we're just talking about the right to use your autonomy kind of like limitlessly. So this is a right. If you're saying this right is absolute, like it would hold then that I would then be, it would be like permissible for me to do actions and like ground this in bodily autonomy that could potentially harm or unalive another.
Yeah, but that's different.
Why?
Because you're harming someone that's actually living.
All right, listen, Sarah doesn't get to represent the pro-life side, okay? That's something that's in that card right now. All right. All right. So let's, okay, serious debate, right, Lexi? So my view, right, I'll just give you my view, and you can just like, poke some hole in it or try to find some issue found within it. My view is going to be, if your actions that you knowingly or voluntarily take part in result in an individual being, caused to be in a state of dependency, then you're going to have some kind of a responsibility or obligation to provide this individual with the resources that are going to be necessary to remove them out of said state of dependency. So what would be like the contention that you would find?
And also, this is just a moral obligation.
It's a moral obligation that I think that should be applied within some, form of a systematic structure in the form of like legislation.
Interesting.
I think Napkin wants to smoke.
Wait,
We wanted to have a
okay, I know this is kind of off topic, but what are everyone's views here?
I just want to correct you.
Or my bad, not pro-life, my bad. Josh pro-choice. Sarah, the super uncool, mean girl, she's pro-choice. That's her username.
Hey.
Avani, pro-life. Sweet, pro-life. Drewski, pro-life. Napkin, confused.
Pro-choice.
I thought super uncool was pro-life. I'm confused.
My stance fucking holds.
Super
No.
Uncool's a
I was
liar.
just. I've just been LARPing tonight. No, I.
Yeah, she was
I
LARPing. That's why I
yeah,
said she doesn't get to represent us. And then Paige was obviously
I mean, it's an
pro-life.
interesting line of questioning to go down if we're trying to explore like where rights end. But I would just tell you, Lexi, that yes, I'm pro-choice. I hold a bodily integrity stance.
Okay.
But I don't believe that rights are going to be absolute, especially as we're describing scenarios in which like rights, like the right to autonomy, that this could infringe upon the rights of another.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, you got to think about like Joshian ethics.
Yo, relax. Okay, hold on. Can I get a response to that causal position?
Yes. Okay. I'm trying to remember what you said.
Yeah, so it's I can just reiterate it just real fast.
Okay, thank you.
If the actions that you partake in, right, you knowingly or voluntarily take part in these actions and they result in an individual being caused to be in a state of dependency, I'm going to state that there's going to be some kind of a responsibility or obligation that you're going to have to provide for this individual the necessary resources to remove them out of this state of dependency. Obviously, this is going to presuppose that there's going to be an essay exception because this isn't knowingly or voluntarily taking part in the action. And then obviously there's going to be a general form of like a threshold that's going to be met as to where we're going to say it's no longer reasonable to ask you to provide for this individual, right? If it were to like place your life in danger, right? You shouldn't have to like self-sacrifice your life for another individual. I don't think that that should be obligated within society. So other than that, what contention do you have?
I feel like those are all good.
My bad. Josh was dipping out. Have a good night, Josh.
Oh,
You
hi,
really
Josh.
won this one. All right.
Okay, so I feel like those are all good points. I feel like in any case, sorry, I just saw Josh's comment. Even if the woman is quote unquote being irresponsible, I feel like taking responsibility abortion can be considered taking responsibility.
Okay, so I can respond to that, right? Because that seems to be kind of like a claim that's being made. I would disagree with this. It would be equivalent to where, like, if I said, like, I have a responsibility over my child to feed or take care of them, and the way that I'm upholding this responsibility is I'm just refusing to feed this child, resulting in them eventually unaliving, which means that the responsibility is no longer going to be present because the child is no longer alive. That seems to be a direct negation of the responsibility in the first place, not actually upholding the responsibility itself.
Yeah, I see your view on that. Kind of my view on it is that I don't think anyone just wants to go out and just get an abortion just for the hell of it. Like, I mean, of course there are going to be cases where that happens, but I don't think it's very often that people just go out and get abortions for the hell of it because they're just like, I don't want to have any responsibility. I don't want anything to do with this. I would say most women, it is very traumatic and it is a last resort. I mean, of course, if they're getting an abortion, if it's because of like a quote unquote irresponsible reason, they didn't want to get pregnant in the first place. So this is kind of like their last resort.
I would say that a big majority of abortions are for dodging parenthood. It's because they don't want the responsibility of taking care of a child.
Yeah.
Because like you can go to the CDC or the Guttmacher Institute, and you can see the reasons why women get abortions, and it's generally going to be like financial reasons, family reasons, education, job, all of these things. And this is, it's just logically going to follow that they don't want to be a parent.
Well, and also, right, the reasoning as to why an individual seeks an abortion, as long as the responsibility or obligation is going to be present, that's not going to have any kind of an implication against the responsibility or obligation that's going to be present itself, right? As long as it meets these kind of necessary conditions for the responsibility to be there. In other words, not an instance of SA, not an instance of the medical exception in somebody, some hypothetical scenario, even though majority of, practitioners state that they don't actually find that there's instances where they have to unalive, a fetus to be able to save the life of the mother. Let's just say hypothetically, this entails to become a situation where this happens. We would acknowledge that that would be justified in that instance. But in every other instance where abortion would be applicable, we would state that this would become unjustified because there's a present responsibility or obligation that's going to be seen.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point.
I think
Wait,
could
is that
acknowledge.
a concession? Wait, hang on. Let's see, is that a concession? I just want to know really quick.
I think she's thinking.
Yeah, I'm just like actually thinking about this because you guys are. I like that you guys are actually making good points and not getting angry or putting other people down necessarily for their beliefs, and you're giving them time.
No, I only get angry with Sarah.
Okay.
Mikey,
Lexi,
why do you get mad at Sarah?
Wait, and unironic, and I'm being very unironic about that. I wasn't thinking I'm trolling. I really do
Lexi-
actually like Sarah. Sarah brings out like a new frustration in
I know.
me when I
I
debate.
like- I like
debate
it.
with her.
I know, I like it.
It's crazy.
Lexi, I would just say that you could, even if you acknowledge that this obligation exists, you could perhaps say that like if like the burden of like sustaining this obligation or following it through is going to be unreasonable, that like then that would sort of like negate the obligation altogether. So like you can understand it like normatively, I guess you could say, like I understand intuitively why this obligation would exist if we're saying, you are complicit in placing this being into a state of dependency, and now I owe it something. You could then just say, well, even despite this fact, I would say that like pregnancy is going to be too unreasonable to
Yeah.
justify.
Wait,
You,
how do
Sarah, agreeing that there's an obligation?
No, I'm just
Causal
saying that,
concession?
no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that would be like that was oh fuck, what's his name? It'll come to me. We were in a live earlier where somebody was saying that they understood, like intuitively they understood causal, but just that the burden is going to be unreasonable.
Yeah, well, I think that like honestly, I think that that's it's very close to like a cop-out answer to just state, oh, this is unreasonable. Because if you're acknowledging that the obligation or the responsibility is going to be there, you're going to be acknowledging, and you even say that it's intuitive. Well, this would mean that it actually seems to be lining with your reasoning to where you're going to acknowledge this responsibility or obligation, but then you're just arbitrarily stating, oh no, what the obligation is actually calling for is going to be somehow crossing this threshold of reasonability, even though your own intuitions are going to be identifying that the responsibility or obligation is actually going to be in line with that, with stating that it's intuitive, which means that it's going to be in line with your general reasoning.
I would say that like
I don't agree
self-sacrifice.
with that.
So like the idea of
Yeah,
why.
that's the medical exception.
Yeah, so right. So if someone who runs causal is going to hold a medical exception, I think they would still agree that like it would be perhaps most virtuous to like try to sustain the pregnancy. However, it would be unreasonable. It would become unreasonable. This obligation would become unreasonable once like this is going to now entail that she self-sacrifice.
Well, of course, right, but that
Well,
doesn't.
that's
think
another
just-
principle, right?
This
Yeah,
is
but
just
that's part
moving-
of the. But real quick, but that's part of the principle of the obligation itself. That's why we give the disclaimer of the fact of the exception in which that we give as to where if it does call for you to, place your life in some form of risk or imminent death, right? Then we're obviously going to state that crosses that threshold. But everything that's found before that, we're not going to say that that's going to meet that kind of threshold of stating that it's unreasonable to uphold that responsibility.
Would you say it would be unreasonable if for some reason in like one particular case, instead of 9 months, a pregnancy was going to last for 9 years? Would you say then like that temporal consideration would be sufficient for you to say,
No,
well, no, this is...
I don't draw temporal lines because the obligation technically exists, right, for the entirety of the 18 years of existence of the child itself. So I don't think that, and honestly, and I'm even prepared to state that if a child is born with some form of a disability to where they're not going to be able to cognitively develop and become like a rational being at the age of 18 to where they can, make decisions for themselves, I would say that this obligation is still going to be present over them. Now it can be transferred.
necessarily like...
Well, hold on. Now it could be transferred, right,
I was just gonna say
to
that.
some form of a third party, right? In the sense of a caretaker, but that doesn't mean that the obligation itself doesn't exist. So no, I don't find temporal lines to be convincing.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, obviously, I wouldn't imagine that you would hold that somebody would be prevented once this child is born from like transferring this obligation. If not for temporal considerations, are there other considerations that you would make outside of like the most extreme, which would be unaliving? If we were to show that this woman were going to incur some severe or like debilitating injury, like how far down potentially is that threshold going to be?
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to necessarily identify the threshold, but when I think of the general entailments of pregnancy, I don't find any of these, instances or risks that can be ensued besides the risk of life meeting some kind of a threshold where I find that my intuitions no longer agree with it. I find anything else to be kind of arbitrary to draw that line there. So no.
If somebody were able to provide you with like a specific example, like I understand in a more abstract sense, it would be challenging to do that. But if somebody were to provide to you, a condition or a specific complication, and were to be able to articulate to you like what that's going to entail, is it possible that you might then reconsider, given like that
Well,
new
considering the
information?
fact that even with the current instance of pregnancy, that like we could even give the example of like women that go through birth that rip from their vaginal canal down to their rectum, and I still don't find this to meet the threshold. No, I don't really think that there's going to be an instance that's going to really be convincing to me that this is like unintuitive. No.
I would say that like the tearing, even though that sounds super gruesome, I don't think you would be alone in saying that that specifically might not meet the threshold. But what if we were to say that like this is now going to impact some organ or some bodily function to the degree that this person were going to be like permanently injured or suffering significantly as a result? I think if we were to provide you with information,
Yeah, I think that
there it might be possible. You might not know it now, but I think like perhaps it
yeah.
might be possible that there would be
Mhm.
an instance that you might.
Yeah, I think like if we're talking about suffering, it's generally going to be entailed to some kind of like a mental state, and I don't think that mental states are going to be something that's going to meet that threshold now.
I meant like physical, like some sort of like physical pain or suffering. That
Yeah, I
could
just
to a
again I
degree be
can't.
injured.
Yeah, again, like I said, I can't think of one that would be identifiable that would meet this threshold to where I would say that it would be justified to not incur this responsibility or obligation.
Interesting. What if we were talking about a scenario if this woman had other children that required her care, and due to the complications, which on their own might not be sufficient, if we're to take into consideration.
Oh, phone call.
Hmm.
Divine intervention. Alhamdulillah.
So if we were to say that this woman had other children who needed her care, and this potential complication could be so significant that she would be incapable of like providing care to other children that she has, would that factor into how you would consider
No,
like that threshold?
no, not necessarily, because I see that no different as like like I don't know, like I would see it like no different as like a woman that's like mentally unwell and states that if she's not allowed to unalive one of her children, that she's just not going to take care of any of her children. I wouldn't say that it would be permissible for her to unalive one of her children, even under the threat that she's not going to take care of like her other children, or there's some entailed possibility that she wouldn't. No, I don't find that to meet the threshold. That doesn't spark my intuitions with that. But I do listen, Sarah. I know that we've had like round after round after round every night that we've ran into each other, but I generally was trying to keep the dialogue between Lexi and I, because this would be like round
Yes.
4 or 5 between you and I. So
That's cool.
yeah, so Lexi, do you have any kind of like a response, maybe to anything that you heard between the dialogue between me and Sarah, or the original position that I presented? By the way, Kay, I just want to let you know that if you're away for too long, it will end the live. I don't know if your phone died or if you're passed out, like if you just like dropped some narcoleptic situation, but I just wanted to let you know, just so that your live doesn't end.
Okay, Stephen.
But yeah, Lexi, any response while we're on borrowed time?
I honestly think you both had very good points about your views. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. guess I just have different views on what.
There we go. WK.
Sorry, I'm trying to find my words.
I was hoping it wasn't about to end because it hit the coffee cup for a minute. I didn't know if your phone died. I was like, I hate in the middle of the discussion when the live just ends, bro.
My data just like gave out for some reason, but I'm back though.
Oh, bro, are
That's
you
nice.
on T-Mobile by chance?
No, I'm on Verizon.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I used to hit random dead spots with my Verizon too when I had it. T-Mobile be doing it to me too.
On a side note, Mustafa, W sleep apnea, W narcolepsy.
That's crazy.
No hate for anyone in the comments that experiences this.
Are we gonna hear from Chris? Just wondering.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
so
yeah,
jealous that you
yeah,
guys get that nose machine.
Yeah, I do
Yeah,
just want to
yeah.
let Lexi maybe if you're good on the conversation and you just don't have a response right now, that's totally fine. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to be able to give a response if you do have one, and then we can
Yeah.
move to Chris if you're.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say I think you both made really good points. And everything I really agree with and stuff was basically already said. So for now, I'm gonna let Chris talk because they've
All
been
right,
waiting
bet
for a while. So.
W bio Lexi.
Also, Mustafa, all I'm hearing from you is like an ethical plea. I don't. This doesn't. Just to refute this, it's just.
What is
And
an
For the
ethical
sake of
plea?
debate, I'm morally bankrupt, right?
You're
Well,
appealing
yeah,
to your own ethical framework.
So the claim that's being made here, right, in a normative discussion is just going to be identifying, again, like I stated earlier, that we're going to be as pro-lifers identifying, Kai, that there's going to be some kind of a wrong maker, right, when it comes to the action of abortion, right, specifically entailed, right, with the view of like flow. Right, flow is going to be acknowledging that there's going to be some kind of a wrong that's clearly going to be entailed when it comes to depriving individuals from a future like ours. So I'm just simply staking making the claim, right, that there's going to be some kind of a wrong maker to the action of abortion. If this is referred to as some kind of an ethical plea, right, it's just going to be shifting the burden upon the pro-choicer to be able to identify why that's not the case.
He got aborted, so he can't really respond.
Oh damn!
Hey yo,
Hi.
That's crazy. What's up, Kai?
stacked panel.
Stacked panel? W stacked panel?
Real,
I
real.
did not kick him. Whoever brought me up kicked him.
But no, so Chris, did you hear the position that I'm presenting with the causal argument? And if you didn't, I can repeat it. If you did, I don't want to bore you with a repetition, and just ask you if you have like a response to it.
Just by like y'all guys going back and forth, it's like really good because like the people I talked to yesterday, like sweet life, like sleep profile life, like I like so
Chris, you can just call me Tiffany.
yeah, okay. So like those people, they already know my situation, other than like the stuff that I went through. Because like me personally, I'm like I'm not saying that I'm pro-choice, but I'm not pro-life. Like I'm like more like I'm just need more advice because at the end of the day, I'm not comfortable with telling a woman what she can and cannot do because down here, we get bashed for it just because we want women to be like, okay, at least think about it. But it's like I get bashed for like even, but at the same time, I feel like life is precious because even even my situation, like I was forced to get one. Like I was forced to get an abortion. Like I didn't have no say so and whatever. And it wasn't necessarily my mom and my father's fault. It was the person that I was dealing with. He was just basically saying like, I don't want the baby. I don't want you to have it. And he just basically just gave me the money like, here, like I don't want you to have it. And me being 16 and me being a minor, I didn't really have no choice of saying like, oh, I want to keep it or I don't want to. Like it felt like my voice was just basically not heard. So it's like I don't want, and plus I don't want women to go through the physical pain of getting that, because it's like it's not fun. Like it's horrible. Like just sitting there and having to go through that physically, and then you mentally and emotionally is like you feel guilty, because to this day I feel guilty about not speaking up and not saying anything, because it's like at the end of the day it's my body, and I felt like I should say like I wanted to keep it. I don't. I wanted to keep it, but it's like at the end of the day I couldn't say nothing. I didn't. So they just basically I had no choice but to get it. And then now that I'm currently pregnant, and it's more like, well, if I would have said something right then and there, I would have just, this would have been my second child. And it's like, I was 6 weeks pregnant. Baby had a heartbeat and everything. And they just like, you know what? We don't want you to keep it. So now that I'm 19 and about to be 20, it's like, I feel guilty. So I just be want to ask you guys for advice. Like, what should I do? Because, like, I don't want to be that type of woman that'll get cussed out by another woman because I'm like, oh, like, at least think about it. Like, at least sit on it. Like, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, I don't know what else can I say?
Can I say something about that?
Yeah,
Go
sure.
ahead.
I'm actually really sorry that you went through that. That's really horrible. I'm sorry. I can't believe that happened to you. I don't even know what to say. I don't know how to comfort you. I'm really sorry. But
Yeah. So I just want to say, you know, I side with her. I'm also sorry. I think I heard your story on. Weren't you on Jason's live or somebody else's live the other time?
Hey,
Yeah.
But
my
do
life. It was my life
yeah,
last night.
yeah. That it's very unfortunate that happened, and I'm not trying to sound insensitive, but in these sort of spaces, we try to stay away from anecdotes as much as possible, because people usually get like they feel some type of way when people like respond to their anecdotes and stuff like that. So I'm not invalidating your experience, but I just want to keep it to a debate forum. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, I was just asking for advice, you know what I'm saying? Because, like, at the end of the day, I don't want women to go through anything, like, painful. But at the same time, a baby's life is more precious than anything. Because at the end of the day, that baby, no, but that baby didn't ask to be here. He didn't.
Yeah.
Or she didn't. They didn't ask to be here. It's like, and I'm not going to talk about the people that have been SA'd. I'm just going to be saying in general. It takes two to make one. And you can't, and it's like, you know what you was doing that night. You knew what you was doing when you decided you wanted to mangle with this person. And you knew the consequences. And at the end of the day,
Yeah.
you knew that. So would you be, why would you have, why would you do that to a baby that has no say so, that didn't ask to be here? For the
Yeah.
people that was actually SA, I'm sorry that people went through that.
Yeah.
I'm
I
sorry
think you're
because you didn't have a choice. You didn't have a choice in your own body. You decided you didn't want to lay down with this person. You was forced. So that's why I talk about people who actually was not SA, because at the end of the day, you knew what you was doing with your partner. And at the
yeah.
end of the day, you still haven't took it into consideration. You didn't sit down with your partner like, hey, we should talk about this. Y'all, some women just be like, you know what, I'm going to the clinic. Like, F this, I can't do it, this and this and that. And sometimes I realize even then, like, some people don't ask, not even ask, but some people don't include their partner's feelings about things. Because let's say I want an abortion, but my man or my husband, like, babe, I don't think I want this. Like, I want to be here for my baby.
Yeah. So
But
Chris,
it's,
I think your position sort of actually aligns with what Mustafa was just talking about, which is just the causal argument. So I think what you're saying is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're getting at is if you know the potential risks or consequences that come with the act that you're engaging in, that you ought to be obligated to some degree for that life that you caused to be in a state of dependency, right? That's kind of what you're getting at.
yes,
And you're saying that in cases of SA, that's understandable. Like you think it's because, it's unconsensual. So you give the SA exception.
yes.
Okay.
Sarah, you should run your causal
W,
defeater.
Chris. W, Chris. Yeah.
Does that
Yeah.
exist?
Yeah. So it's really easy. If somebody like to be able to prevent, right, from being able to get this kind of like backlash and stuff like that you're talking about, just present them the logical argument, right? Exactly like what Kay just said, right? Just say, I view it that if an individual, knowingly and voluntarily uncrustable W, if that's not grape, you're losing. But anyways, but
Well,
anyways, right?
at least heat it up.
Uncrustables are what?
At least
Yo,
heat it
whoa,
up. Why
that's
eating it cold? You don't
what?
eat
No,
that
that's the way
cold.
to.
Heat
No, that's the
it
way
up
to
is the
do
best.
it. It's cold. Anyways,
Uncrustables
right?
are an
So,
F tier.
yo, that's crazy, bro. That's
That's a
crazy.
thing.
But no, so again, right? So it's really easy, right? Just present them the logical view and just say, hey, I think that if somebody knowingly or voluntarily, right, takes part in this action, and as a result of it, right, an individual has been brought into existence, and what we acknowledge is that individuals at the beginning of their existence are going to be in this fundamental state of dependency, then you would acknowledge, right, you find there to be some kind of a wrong that happens if they don't uphold this responsibility, right? You would view it no different than with somebody with a child outside of the womb, right, choosing to neglect or negate their responsibility over their child in the sense of starving them, et cetera, which was going to be analogous to the abortion pill. The abortion pill literally starves the fetus, right? It prevents the
Right.
fetus from being able to intake the necessary nutrients to be able to provide for itself. So at that point, right, if you just present that to somebody and they tell you or try to lash out on you, or just be like, I just gave you the logical explanation to it, right? If you don't have